One of the most significant tools within the Grand MA3 software is the Selection Grid, which is the tool used to view and modify the content of a group. In MA3, every group contains unique positioning data for each element stored in it, and that's what the Selection Grid tells you at the surface. But the power of the Selection Grid is derived from three main things. For one, the ability to quickly select, modify, and reshape the content of a group. Secondly, the ability to organize, store, and recall the positioning of subfixtures within fixture types. And third, which is most commonly known, is interaction with matrix values within recipes or presets. Keep in mind, when working with recipes, when you insert a group into the selection field here on the left, you're inserting the group with that positioning data baked in. So any further information you place in that recipe is being applied based on that positioning data, not just the raw content. At the same time, any changes you make to the positioning data inside that group will be reflected immediately by any recipes that reference it, which is incredibly useful, but it's something to keep in mind if you dial in a look you like, then decide to make changes to that group afterwards. Everything I explain in this video will be in the context of working with recipes, as that is the recommended and vastly preferred workflow for almost every MA3 show. Let's start by looking at the toolbar here on the left. Most of these functions are fairly self-explanatory. If you hover over them, the command line displays a quick summary of what the function does. I'm not going to explain each of these individually, but rather in context with real-world situations. I'll start by showing you how quick making your base groups should be with the tools available in the software alone. I've imported my MVR from my visualizer, so the fixture placement in my 3D viewer matches the fixture placement of my stage. Let's first take a look at how my patch is organized. As you can see, I'm using grouping fixture types to organize my patch based on fixture type. So if I come over here to my fixture sheet, you'll see that I can easily show or hide fixtures based on their fixture type. First I'll turn on highlight. Then I'll come over here and select fixture 100, which is my Rivale grouping fixture. And if I hit the down keyword, you'll see that it expands to the fixtures within that group. If I disable highlight and apply my 0 to 360 phaser, you'll see that the phase is actually applied in reverse fixture ID order. However, to quickly fix this, I'll press my linearize by fixture ID, reapply the phaser, and now my phaser is traveling from fixture ID low to high. To turn this into a grid selection, I have a few ways of doing this. I'll come over here to my 3D viewer, and there's this one button over here that's 3D to grid. If I press this, you'll see that the grid has updated based on my camera's view of the stage. If we look closely, you'll see that some fixtures are placed a little bit above others, which is technically the case for the camera. However, when I want to interact with this later on, this is not what I want to work with. So I'll clear out, select fixture 100 again and hit down, and I'll move to my 2D front view, hit the camera to grid again, and then I'll disable preserve grid positions. Disabling this setting simultaneously executes the remove gaps and remove offset function. As you can see, we now have a pixel perfect representation of the stage that I can easily apply any phaser to, while knowing that there will not be any weird gaps in my selection. Let's now move to my Kyalami group, which is slightly more complicated because these are placed along my z-axis on my stage. Personally, when I program fixtures on a z-axis, I don't typically actually arrange them on the z-axis unless I'm going for a very specific look where I'm using all three axes at the same time. If I hit the down key to select the fixtures, and then hit my camera to grid function, you'll see that the fixtures only populate in one x-coordinate per side. So for this case, we'll go back to my 3D front view, press the camera to grid again, disable preserve grid positions, and auto-scroll over to see my content. If I disable highlight and apply my basic 0 to 360 phaser, you'll see that on the x-axis, this is actually pretty good. However, if I apply my 0 to 360 y phaser, you'll see that there is some weird spacing issues going on here. To fix this, I'll enter setup mode, and I could go through and select and manually place each fixture in its right spot. However, there is a much faster way of doing this. I'll start by selecting my top row, hit the rotate 90 button, and then I'll hit my divide by 2 button a few times. Then I'll rotate it back to the left, deselect, and move to my next row. Do the same thing, rotate 90, divide by 2, back to the left, select my next row, rotate 90, divide by 2 to the left, etc. And now, because each row is flat, I can then compress my grid, reapply my Y phaser, and now you'll see that this grid is pixel perfect. Let's now look at some more complicated fixtures to see how the selection grid can speed up our programming process even more. Let's take a look at our PXL curve group. If I go through the basic process from before, and have my master instances arranged pixel perfect, I'm in a good starting spot. Because the software lets you store positioning data of the subfixtures within these fixture types, it's really only a few more clicks before we have a pixel perfect selection of all the subfixtures. By default, if I hit down again and disable highlight and apply my phaser, you'll see that even though the grid thinks the phaser is traveling correctly, The effect is actually inverted on the top line of pixels because those fixtures are hung upside down. To fix this, I'll head into my patch, go to the Fixture Types window, select my pixel curve fixture type, copy it, and paste it to a new fixture type line. Also add the word invert at the end of this fixture type. I'll go back to my patch window, enable show 3D positions, then select all the fixtures that are mounted on top. I'll then exchange these for the inverted fixture type in the same channel mode, which is full pixel 169. I'll then exit my patch, and because I know the first fixture is mounted upside down, I'll select fixture 401, hit down, then hit my rotate 90 key twice. I'll then type grid store, select OK, clear out. I'll select fixture 400, hit down, hit camera to grid, compress it, then hit down again. Then now when I apply my phaser, it travels perfectly. Let me also show this process for the wild bars. If I select fixture 500, hit down, then hit camera to grid, compress it, hit down again, you'll see that in this case, some extra subfixtures appeared in my selection grid, but this is okay. I'll simply type -*.1 through 2 in my command line, which will release to the .1 and .2 instances, and then now that just my .3s are selected, I'll hit down again. By default, these fixture types typically have their pixels oriented horizontally, but in this case they're mounted vertically. So I'll clear out, then I'll select one .3 instance, hit down, rotate it 90, type grid store, OK, clear out, select fixture 500, move down, camera to grid, compress it, hit down again, -*.1 through 2, then hit down again, and now the fixtures are oriented vertically. The last thing I want to touch on here is, what do we do when we don't want an effect to run on the grid, and rather run like an MA2 style symmetrical or zigzag selection? Well, one option is, you assign your fixtures to a layout, and you set the layout selection mode to linearize. Then, like an MA2, you manually go through, select the fixtures in the order you want, and what you'll notice is that when you're in this linearize mode, you'll see that the selection grid automatically skips the gaps, which is kind of how MA2 thinks about these types of selections as well. However, because the selection grid is coordinate-based, you're able to reference exact coordinates or relationships between coordinates in Lua. And because I'm a nerd and like creating tools that make my life easier, I built this plugin that essentially goes through the grid and makes these zigzag selections at the push of a button. I found that these three selection orders tend to be the most common selections I use when I don't want to use a grid selection, and they also tend to take a lot of time, especially when working with a ton of pixels. And lucky for the few of you who made it to the end of this video, if you send me a DM of what you ate for lunch today, I will send you a download link for this plugin. I know we covered a lot, but I hope the material we covered allows you to make pixel-perfect selections faster and with less effort than before.